Now, the co-founder of OceanGate, the firm that built and operated the Titan Submersible, has rejected claims that it cut corners. The Titan sub lost communication on Sunday as it made a descent to the wreck of the Titanic. All 5 men on board were killed in a catastrophic implosion. Yesterday, a robotic diving vehicle discovered debris from the sub on the North Atlantic seabed. Let's now bring in SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease for the latest. Very good afternoon to you, Sherwin. I dare say good afternoon, given what has been unearthed. Perhaps you could talk to the latest emerging. What's the mood and atmosphere in terms of the developments?
Well, yesterday afternoon, we were in conversation about, this submersible, the Titan, losing the 96 hours of oxygen it had on board once its final voyage began on Sunday. And very quickly, the narrative shifted after the U.S. Navy put out a statement that they had found a field of debris about 500 meters off the bow of the Titanic near the seabed, about 4 kilometers near the ocean floor. And so the narrative very quickly shifted from search and rescue to possibly a recovery operation that now continues. The US Navy saying that it was aware of an implosion, Liesl, picked up by its secret network of underwater sensors designed to track hostile submarines under the high seas in that region. On Sunday, in the vicinity where the Titan submersible began its final voyage, and at the time communications were lost with the mothership, the mothership that essentially controlled the navigation of the Titan that remained above the water. So we understand that the Navy was aware of this noise, but the search and rescue operation had to continue because the implosion sound that they got wasn't definitive. They passed on, we understand, this information to the U.S. Coast Guard. And of course, it was the U.S. Coast Guard yesterday afternoon that announced at that 3 p.m. local time press conference that they had discovered this field of debris. They had found parts of the Titan, including its tail, and of course passed on their condolences to the families, because the implications, of course, immediately were that the 5 people on board did not survive.
Absolutely, sure. And I think just in terms of the scrutiny that the industry faces at this point, is that something that has become a talking point? What's being unearthed on that front as we speak?
Very much so. I mean, this is now moving to an investigation, essentially, right? A recovery operation, but there is no clarity on whether, for example, the bodies will be recovered, right? You have to understand that this implosion was a very violent event. So essentially what happens is at those depths, a hollow structure like the Titan implodes inward quite violently. So it would have been quite a catastrophic event. And so essentially what the investigation is seeking to do now, we understand that these remotely operated vehicles that essentially identified the field of debris are continuing to map the area so as to, piece together the pieces essentially as to what might have happened here. But a lot of people, as you correctly pointing out, are weighing in on this, including filmmaker, the director of the Titanic movie, James Cameron, who is very familiar with submersibles. He's been down to the ocean floor in terms of the research he's done for various films. This is what he had to say about Titan and certainly its aftermath. Watch.
Search. 4 days of search. They're searching everywhere. They were running around with their hair on fire. The sub was right where it was. It was literally on the seafloor below its last known position, which is the first place you look in a search, is the last known position. You don't go running around all over the landscape with planes and trains and automobiles searching, right? It was right where it was when it imploded, and I knew that's where they were going to find it. So OceanGate shouldn't have been doing what it was doing. I think that's pretty clear. I wish I had been more vocal about that, but I think I was unaware that they weren't certified because I wasn't really studying it. I wasn't really interested. Stockton Rush asked me if I wanted to go out there and dive this season. I wasn't interested.
Again, talking about the lack of certification, we've been talking about that all week. And of course, the innovative use of new technology on board Titan, Liesl, is going to be a narrative, a continued conversation moving forward. Of course, a lot of talk about the carbon fiber materials used to construct the hull of Titan. It is this material that essentially gave way, and that's why you had this violent implosion. Normally, you would use steel, aluminium, titanium to construct the hull of a submersible of this nature. And so a lot of questions for the likes of the late CEO, Stockton Rush, described very much as an innovator, man that liked to push the boundaries, very much, in the vein of adventurers, but leading to his fateful demise along with the other 4 passengers aboard here.
Sherwin, I know yesterday we spoke about waivers potentially, and that's also again resurfaced. I wonder if the documents that they signed were ironclad. Is there room for families perhaps to sue despite liability waivers? What's being unearthed on that front?
Yeah, that's a tricky legal question, right? I mean, you correctly point out that everybody on board would have to sign a waiver. Does that now essentially indemnify OceanGate from any legal culpability here? Remember, these were very wealthy people aboard, and so one imagines that their legal teams will be pushing the boundaries in terms of these waivers, in terms of the certification process. Were there laws, for example, that were broken? What is the regulations in terms of private companies being able to take people to these depths, right? 4,000 meters below the ocean surface, 4 kilometers down. What are the legal implications of this? What was the jurisdiction? Were you in the high seas? Who governs the high seas? You're talking about, 600 kilometers off the coast of Newfoundland, off the Canadian coast. So a lot of questions, certainly, but one imagines that the families will be pushing the boundaries in terms of legal questions here. We have also heard statements from 2 families of the 2 deceased on board, the 3 deceased on board, I beg your pardon. The family of Hamish Harding described him as a guide, an inspiration, a support, and a living legend. They said they were unified in grief with the other families who lost loved ones. We also heard from the relatives of Shahzada and Suleiman Dawood, the very wealthy Pakistani-born businessman, and his son, who went down on Titan on Father's Day. So, just a side note there. It's a difficult period of mourning for us that has begun. We are truly grateful to all those involved in the rescue operations. Their untiring efforts were a source of strength for us at this time. So focused on their grief right now, but one imagines that statements will be revisited in the days and weeks ahead as we get more clarity as to what might have happened here. And as you correctly point out, very possibly, a legal avenue here that might be pursued.
Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News correspondent in New York, giving us the latest. Thank you for your time with us. Again, on the back of the announcement by the U.S. Coast Guard, confirming the loss of the Titan sub, confirming that all 5 passengers on board, in fact, had passed away.